Hello, Fearless Gamers! Matt here for Fearless Games, and today I'm going to be doing a video in a kind of like a celebrational series for the release of the Dark Angels, the second 6th edition codex that we're going to get. Now, no surprise to most that have been watching the channel, I am a huge Dark Angels fan. So when I found out that the Dark Angels were going to be the next codex, I was amazed. I was on cloud 9. The only way this could have, gotten any better is if the Eldar were also coming out around the same time. And so, today, I've decided that I'm going to do a whole video series from now until the release of the Dark Angels new codex, going over a whole bunch of different stuff. So we're going to go over, I'm going to do a quick, update of my Legends of War stuff, because that's technically all Dark Angel-y. Going to look over the new models that are going to be available on release. Going to do a fluff, like a primer on the fluff about the Dark Angels, and we're gonna end a couple of my thoughts and feelings prior to its release, and it's all gonna build up to on release day an open box opening of the at least 2 of the new Dark Angel model kits, and later on there'll be a book corner based off the codex, which the new series is going to be called Book Corner Codex Edition. And so, today we're going to be doing just a very brief look at the fluff of the Dark Angels. And right now, I will apologize if this goes on for a bit, because there is a big, huge chunk of information that I'm going to be throwing at you guys, and I'm trying to condense it down as much as possible throughout this whole thing. So, let's go on. So, as most people are aware, the Dark Angels are known as the First Legion. And this spawns from 2 different reasons. The first and the original idea is that the Dark Angels were the First Legion because after the Emperor created the Primarchs and they were scattered to the 4 winds, he went out in search of them. And the first place he managed to go, and the first planet that he made planetside to, was Caliban, where he found Lionel Johnson. And after finding Lionel Johnson, he took a sample of DNA and created the first Legion of Space Marines, the Dark Angels. Now, as time has gone on, Games Workshop's kind of gotten the idea that the only way to make Warhammer 40,000 even better is if every page of the fluff, history, backgrounds, everything except for the rules of the models is just oozing irony. So, at this point, what they did was then they decided to do this thing where they changed it around and made Horus the first person that he found. You know, little joke, aha, the first to be found, the greatest, the awesomest, the evil one. So, they decided to change this up a bit, but they wanted to keep the Dark Angels as being the First Legion. So the way they worked around this with, being Horus being the first Primarch, and I think Lionel Johnson turned into like the 3rd or 4th Primarch that was found. And that was after the Primarchs were scattered, the Emperor was like, well, I gotta find them, but first let me unify Terror and the solar system, and then I'll spread out and try and find the Primarchs and then reunite the whole galaxy, universe, or whatever you want to call it. And so he happened to have samples of DNA of all the Primarchs already stored, and so he used those to create the Space Marines. And the first sample that he used was the sample from Lionel Johnson, and he made the Dark Angels out of those, the first Space Marines, and thus they're now the First Legion. So that's how they kind of kept that whole, they're the First Legion, but they just changed how they classify which Legion came first. Originally it was which Primarch was found in which order, because once he found his son, he was then able to extract the DNA, and changed to, no, he was smart enough, he got DNA samples of them beforehand, and he just randomly picked which one he was going to do first. Now, a couple of things about the Dark Angels, which is very interesting. It's not really well known out there, but the Dark Angels are very big into plasma. They find mastering plasma technology as an art form. It doesn't really mention it in most of the codexes. The first time, if I recall it ever being mentioned officially by Games Workshop, was in a White Dwarf in 3rd edition when they made the Dark Angels Tactical Squad, because they were the first tactical squad to feel the plasma cannon in the squad. And it was said that they find, mastering plasma technology to be an art form for them, and they decided to, master it as best they can. This is then adapted into the role-playing games. Pretty much all of the Dark Angel specific gear is plasma-based. And it's been building up to this whole idea that they're thinking, there's rumors we're not sure about, them getting special bonuses to plasma rolls and such like that. But that's one of their biggest things, is like, out of all the Space Marine legions, they're the ones that have mastered plasma the most. That's why Samael has a plasma cannon under his jet bike. That's why in most depictions on the Dark Angels Codex, the Dark Angel in the front, the prominent one, is wielding a plasma weapon of some sort. Azrael is got a combi plasma weapon, and it's always, every time when you see every time you see the option to put plasma in, everyone's like, oh yeah, that's very Dark Angel-y, that makes sense. Typically dreadnoughts for them have plasma cannons and stuff like that. Another interesting thing about them is they have a rivalry with the Space Wolves. If you look in the 6th edition rulebook, they're battle brothers of convenience, because they do not get along. And this is primarily because of a duel that happened between their two Primarchs. Russ was only bested in victories by Lionel Johnson and Horus, and he didn't like that. He also didn't like the fact that Lionel Johnson very rarely spoke, and when he did, it was very, plain, to the point, and he usually only spoke when spoken to. He very rarely outreached and just struck up a conversation, and Russ took that personally. They were both charged to deal with this one heretic on a planet, and Russ is there and he's like, this dude personally insulted me, I'm taking him down. And Lionel Johnson was like, no, I just spent the last 2 days scouting the area, finding out the place's weak points. I'm not giving up all that work just so you can do some petty, deal with some petty issues you have with the guy. And so Russ rushes the keep, and he's trying to get through the barracks, and while he's doing this, the Lion uses the intel that he got to sneak into the facility, and he kills this heretic on top of the building wall, while Russ was stuck on the ground floor, looking up, watching Lionel Johnson do this. So, when they got back together at the end of the campaign, Russ sucker punches Lionel Johnson in the face. And so they start wrestling and battling back and forth and all this stuff. And Russ eventually sees how silly and stupid and pointless this whole fight is. And he just starts laughing at it. What are we doing? This is so stupid. But Johnson was very quick to anger and very slow to forgiveness. This is a very big thing with the Dark Angels. They're very, we're cool, but if you wrong us in any way, oh, will we hate you for life, type of thing. And they will never forgive, and they never forget. So Johnson got up and sucker punched Russ in the face and knocked him out. And Johnson at that point went, okay, we're cool. And he left. And by the time he left, by the time Russ woke up, Lion and all the Dark Angels were gone. And to this day, they still celebrate that whole wrestling rivalry thing. So they whenever they're together. Well, it was originally they got together on the anniversary of it. Now it's whenever they see each other in groups, they kind of set up this thing where they pick a champion from each legion, and they reenact the duel to try and restore honor in their Primarch's name. So as far as I'm aware, Matt Ward changed it on the Space Wolf sides and made it they still do it, but they think it's all in good fun, and it's to keep unification with the chapters and on good terms and such. But on the Dark Angel side, it's still a no, dudes. You pissed us off. Don't frickin' call us, because you guys are not on our good lists. So it's very interesting, that sense, and that's tiny bit reason why me and the Wild Card are not fans of the Space Wolves, because we're Dark Angel fans, and we hate them for what happened back then. Very tiny bit. And so, another interesting thing is the Dark Angels originate from a planet called Caliban. And Caliban was as normal with, if you read any of the Dark Angels, any of the Space Marine fluffs, the planet that the Primarchs lived on was a harsh, barren wasteland, or horrible, evil, dark, only the strongest and best of humanity could survive in the conditions they were in. And Caliban was no different. It was basically a very forest planet, kind of think of like an Endor type of situation, forest moon, in a sense, so it's a forest planet. But in the woods lives these nasty, horrific creatures that are like the thing of nightmares. And they just overrun the forest. So living on the planet is constantly, every day, a fight for survival. Because when you wake up the day, you don't know if your village is going to be... when you wake up that your village is being invaded by some monster rampaging through. And unlike some of the other Primarchs, which happen to land in civilized areas or close to civilized areas, the Lion landed in the middle of the woods. And so he was cut off from all forms of civilization, and he had to live in the heart of this horrible field of these monstrous beasts, that are just hungry for flesh and blood, and he lived like this for 10 years. And actually, after he was found, no one could extract from him what those early years were like for him. He would never talk about it. And when he was 10, he stumbled upon a group of knights led by a man named Luthor, who were part of this order called the Order. On Caliban, there was a lot of these knightly orders that did a lot, were, protecting the villages from these monsters and such. And Luthor stumbled upon Lionel Johnson and in effect saved his life, because they were going to gun him down when they spotted Johnson. And Luthor's like, no, wait, that's a dude. And that started and at that moment, their fates were pretty much intertwined at that point. Luthor took Johnson back with him, and they became very fast friends. And they started basically training and working together to rise up the ranks in the Order. And they were like brothers, they were thick as thieves, nothing would separate them. They basically, in all aspects to them, they were each other's brother. And had the greatest achievements, and Luthor, of course, the Lion, being a Primarch, was always the better between them, but there was no equal compared to Lionel Johnson or Luthor in any aspect. And they rose through the ranks of the Order really quickly. When, skipping up a whole bunch of years after everything, the Emperor finally arrives on Caliban, and he is reunited with his son, and the Dark Angels are formed, and they start gathering up the members of Caliban to make them part of the Legionnaire. Unfortunately, Luthor was too old to go through the process, so they gene-enhanced him, but he was he was not as good as a Space Marine. He was the highest that a physical person could get before reaching Space Marine level. And at this point, Lionel Johnson is, inducted into the Great Crusade, and they go off, and Johnson leaves Luthor behind. And he says to him, you gotta watch over Caliban, and I'm gonna deal with the Great Crusade. You cultivate these dudes, make it so our Legion stays strong, train up the new recruits to be the best that they can be, so the First Legion can uphold their reputation of being the most honored, the most feared, and the most renowned of all the chapters. Because out of all of them, because they were the first, they had the highest standards set for themselves. And they always wanted to show that, in essence, be worthy of the title of First Legion. During the Horus Heresy, Lion was one of those few Primarchs that Horus knew he would never be able to turn, so he just tried to get rid of him. And if my recollection is correct, one Primarch that I do recall, if I recall correctly, that he did encounter during the Horus Heresy was the Night Lord's Primarch. I don't remember his name, forgive me for that. I'll put it right here. And so there's a story that was written about those two dueling, and it was recounting, you know, how they were fighting each other. And each of them were out trying to kill out the other person, but the person who was watching this noted that the difference between the Lion and the Night Lord's Primarch was that every stroke that the Lion made, every move, was done with the intent to kill. He wasn't doing any of these flashy, you know, spins, twirling of his sword and then slicing, or any of these fancy, you know, display moves to show everyone who's watching just how grand he is. No, it was very quick, short, and brutal stabs, intent on less flair, more lethal. And as their fight was going on, eventually the Lion won. And what was also very interesting in this is it also showed how noble Lionel Johnson was at the time, because after he slain his brother, he did not boast, he did nothing stereotypical of a warrior who's just defeated some sort of traitor or heretic or any other great challenge. He simply saluted he brought his sword up to him, up to his face, so in a standard, like, you know, swordly salute, and said to his fallen brother, "I told you I would be your end," and walked away. He was very against flashy showiness and boasting. He was very honorable, and he was very, you know, precision, you know, don't waste movement, make every movement count. And so he unfortunately was one of the Primarchs that was not able to get the Terror when Horus made his invasion. So after he got there, because he was on his way during the final battle, along with, I believe it was the Space Wolves, the battle was over and everything was done. And the Lion at that point then takes all of his battle brothers and he leaves to go to Caliban. And the thing is when they got there, they were attacked by the Caliban defense weaponry. And apparently, when Luthor was left on Caliban to look over everything, that was the final straw for Luthor. He's always had, surprisingly, since him and the Lion were working their way up in the ranks of the orders before the Emperor got to them, been always a little jealous of Johnson, because he was always better. No matter what he did, he could not defeat him. He could not be his better. And he always felt this dark jealousy for that. And the gods of chaos saw that in him and started molding it and nurturing that aspect of him. And when he was left on Caliban, he felt he was abandoned, that the Line didn't need him anymore. And he convinced all of the other Space Marine legionnaires, the Astartes that were on the planet, the same thing, that the Line didn't want them anymore. He abandoned them. He went off to have some awesome great crusade to get honor and glory, and left them all there to say, you know, screw you guys, we're getting all the glory, you guys are not. And so when the Dark Angels came back, they retaliated to basically say, you know, this is what you get for abandoning us. And so when Johnson discovered what happened on the planet, he got infuriated and called down a bombardment on the planet. So all the vessels start blasting bolts into the planet, ripping chunks out of it, driving holes straight into the Earth, and just ripping the planet to shreds. And the one place that they couldn't break through was the Tower of Angels, which was the Knightly Order's castle, their fortress monastery, because it was being protected by a giant shield bubble. So Johnson goes down to the planet and walks into the great courtyard of the Tower of Angels and faces Luthor one-on-one. And with Luthor's enhancements with the Dark Gods enhancements, they were on toe-to-toe with each other for a while. But Johnson was still his better, and he does eventually defeat Luthor. And just before he can strike the killing blow on Luthor, the Lion hesitates, because despite everything that's happened, Luthor was still his brother. Luthor was the man that saved him that saved him from the wilderness. Luthor was his family. And that moment of hesitation, Luthor struck, sending out a mortal wound onto the Lion and dropping him. And at this point, that's when Luthor finally realizes everything that's happened. And it was like as if a curtain has been lifted from his eyes, and he finally saw the grand scheme of what he was doing and what has happened. And his mind snaps. He lets out a psychic cry of despair that basically tells the Chaos Gods that they have lost once again. And so in their anger, they summoned up a warp storm to consume Caliban. And because of all the damage that it took from the bombardment, plus the sheer force of the fight between Luthor and Johnson, the planet just starts ripping to pieces. The fallen Dark Angels that fell to chaos were sucked up into the warp and scattered across the universe. And when the warp storm was over, the only thing that was left was this giant rock face that the Tower of Angels was sitting on. The Dark Angels teleported to the planet, and all they could find was Luthor. They could not find any trace of Lionel Johnson. And all Luthor said was that the Watchers in the Dark, they came and took his body away, but one day he shall return and forgive me. Now, an interesting thing that makes the Dark Angels different from the other chapters is their setup. They have the same company setup as other chapters, but they have this, they have one thing at the top called the Inner Circle, where all their librarians, their chaplains, and their company masters are all a part of. And they're the ones who know the whole history of the Fallen, which is what is known as the Fall. And those Dark Angels that fell to chaos are known simply as the Fallen. And they've kept this secret to themselves to make sure no one else finds out what happened to them, because they do not want this coming out or anyone discovering what had happened to them during this time. And it's only once you rise to the rank of the Inner Circle that you learn the full truth of what's happening and what the Dark Angels' true plans are, which is to hunt down the Fallen. The only two groups that know a little bit about what's happening is the first and second company. First company is the Deathwing. Dark Angels are unique in the sense that they have a whole company of Terminators. Most have, a couple of units of Terminators, set up, but they have a whole company of just Terminators. They're known as the Deathwing. They know pretty much everything but some of the small, more detailed secrets, but they pretty much, it's like a good example is like, a person, think of it like a movie. The Deathwing knows the basic, the plot. You said, okay, this happens in part A, this happens in part B, this happens in part C. These are the main characters, these are the villains, good guys, bad guys, love interests. Whereas the Inner Circle is able to quote the film to verbatim. Then there's the Ravenwing. The Ravenwing is a second company, which is basically field of land speeders, jet bikes, flyers, and the lot. And they know a little bit less. In essence, they could tell you the plot of the film in that aspect. Okay, this is the story of it. So they know the general gist. They know enough to do their job without the risk of them being corrupted by this information. Because the Dark Angels are very... how much can we tell them without them going nuts or ruining everything? So it's a kind of a trust build-up to, in essence, the more trust you gain in the Inner Circle, the higher your rank goes, the more information you get. The Deathwing are basically their warriors to deal with the Fallen whenever they're founded. The Ravenwings, their job is to hunt them down and find them. So in essence, they go, they find the Fallen, and then when battle comes, they call down the Deathwing to deal with it with them. And the one other thing is that there's one secret that only the Chapter Master knows. The Chapter Master's sword, the Sword of Secrets, is actually a key to an inner chamber inside of the rock, and inside it is Luthor. And every Chapter Master has tried to get a confession out of Luthor to get him to repent for his sins. But he only keeps saying that he does not need to redeem himself. He does not need to seek redemption, for the Lion will return and he will forgive him, and his return is soon. other than this, during his moments of coherency where he's not babbling like a madman, usually going like, the Emperor will forgive me, the Emperor will forgive me, I know the Lion will return, he will forgive me, when he's fairly coherent, they usually try to get as much information as they can to try and find where the other fallen are. But the one grand secret that only is known to the Emperor himself about this is that the Lion is actually on the rock. He is in a hidden chamber that nobody can get to except for the Watchers in the Dark. And Lion is there in stasis, healing from his mortal wound, and he is waiting for the time when the Emperor would need him most. And when that time comes, he will awaken, and he will take care of the whole Fallen when he awakens. And that is probably the biggest secret. It's one of those things where it's still valid because they haven't disproved it, but they kind of shove it away and basically go, anyone who's been with us with 2nd edition will know, kudos to them, they're part of the inner circle. And it's actually probably one of the more interesting ideas because a lot of them, they go, oh, when it's like, nobody knows if they're alive or dead, it kind of it confirms that, as far as the Imperium knows, they don't know if he's alive or dead, he's gone. But we as players know the truth about it. Whereas a lot of it is like, Russ. Russ ran off into the Eye of Terror, and we don't know what happened to him. They don't know what happened to him. So, in essence, we kind of lose that feeling of, do we know, and like, oh, if only we could tell them type of feeling. Which is pretty interesting. And the only other really thing about the Dark Angels is they're always constantly on the look for the Fallen. And they will abandon campaigns to get a Fallen. Like, if they're fighting in a campaign and they hear about a Fallen, they will leave just to deal with that Fallen. Because that takes priority over whatever campaign this goes. Because getting rid of the Fallen will regain their honor. They feel that the only way that they can get their honor back is to capture all the Fallen and get them to repent for what they did. Another interesting note is they're also they are not fans of Xenos in any way, shape, or form. In fact, it hasn't been reestablished, maybe when the new codex comes out, but back in 3rd edition, when there was allies, and also in 2nd edition, they would not ally with any army that had a Xenos in it. So no Ogrins, no Ratlins, and they also wouldn't take members of the Inquisition, or the assassins you couldn't have in their army, and stuff like that, because they were they hated aliens. They're like, they're very like Black Templary about that. The only difference between them and the Black Templar is they're okay with Psychers. Probably because Psychers are probably one of the things that helps them find the Fallen. They just hate anything inhuman. In terms of the Inquisition, they're not fans of the Inquisition because they don't like them because they're always so nosy, and they don't want them getting close to any of the information in regards to what happened to Caliban. And in terms of that, with the color scheme, why the Dark Angels are green, is primarily because when Johnson reunited with the Emperor and was introduced to his First Legion, they were all painted black. He had the Legion paint their shoulder pad Caliban green for anyone who was born on Caliban, to remember their home planet and remember where they're from. When Caliban was destroyed and the line was lost, they painted their whole armor green to basically, in memory of Caliban and the lion. So, and the bone white Deathwing Terminators, that's because of a squad of Deathwing Terminators who went back to their home planet to deal with a Xeno problem, and it was tradition on that planet to paint your Dawn white battle makeup on to kind of become like a spirit. And they did this huge thing. They saved this planet from this Xeno invasion, and in honor of their bravery and the feats they were able to perform, all Deathwing now paint their armor bone white. The only thing I'm not sure about is the Ravenwing. I don't know why they're black. I think it's just to be a representation of the original the original Dark Angel's colors, which was black. And, again, the original ones that came from Earth were all black armor, and the ones that came from Caliban had the shoulder pad that was green. But for some reason, the Ravenwing took out the whole green shoulder pad piece. Probably, it could, again, I haven't really looked into why their color scheme is black. The only thing I could guess is to represent that time before they were corrupted, in a sense. And that is all I can really give about the fluff. Sorry if this, seemed fairly long or wordy. I tried to keep it as short and sweet as possible. And that's pretty much all I can really say. If there's any, general questions about the fluff of the Dark Angels, feel free to make a comment. If there's a lot of the same question, I'll repost a response video to this, or just discuss, what's your favorite part of Dark Angel's fluff, if there is a piece, or anything like that. And also, again, check us out on Facebook so you can keep up to date with the latest of what's going on with us on there. And that is all. So until next time, Fearless Gamers, take care.